Hi and welcome to a new video. In this video I want to do quite an important one this time around the firmware updates. So I know in previous videos over the years that I've done is around there's always been a few like updates with features or perhaps a patch for a CVE kind of security kind of update and everything else. But this time it seems to be with current in the news and everything else. So if you see my community post, there's been quite a lot of ASUS routers that have been targeted for going through for their security and also trying to get into them and turn them into kind of bots to actually work as a botnet kind of thing together. Of course, with these criminals and everything else, they can use all that power to do a kind of denial of service attack. So this one is really quite important, and also the main caveat of this one, after you've actually updated this firmware update, it's most important that you also do a full basically reset of your full factory reset of your router as well. So this is quite critical because this is to activate the new protections that are built in, as we'll go on to in a minute. And again, I just want to make you aware of that you after this update, it is important that you do a full factory reset, and of course that will erase everything on your router, and again it cause a bit of an inconvenience for you. But as you got to remember, this thing, basically this router, this box that sits there on all the time, is your gateway to the PC. So basically all your devices go through that, but also it's your kind of connection to the internet, but also for your connection, but also for people to come in as well. And if that's got a problem, then you allow everyone to access kind of your devices within your home network. So it is important that you take the time, perhaps even allocate half an hour perhaps just to read through and everything else, or just watch this video and we'll quickly go through the steps. Again, it's quite straightforward, but it's just a reset. After you've done that, you'll have to do a factory reset, and again according to your router, so you'll probably need to, each model is a little bit different, but there is actually a feature that's built into the firmware kind of thing. So you're on the web interface here, I believe in the app as well, but also there's the button you'll see like you use normally a SIM eject tool or a pin, and there'll be a reset button at the back of your router. So you just always look for that one. If you're not too sure about logging into your router, then just basically use that one. I've got videos if you just do a search on my channel for basic factory reset or reset router, and it'll just go through and show you the video of how I basically just get a pin or a SIM eject tool and just hold it in for like 10 seconds until the either, depending on your model again, when the lights start to flash, and then you just let it go, and then you'll know, of course, once it's factory reset, is that all the Wi-Fi names and the network SSIDs and the passwords are all reset back to default, and you will sadly have to go and put in back all your information that you have. So it is vital that perhaps before you do the factory reset is you log in, or you just make a note of what your password is that you've got your setup for, and some of the settings and everything else. That's what I'm saying, is perhaps just take out half an hour of your time, but then you won't have to do it again for hopefully forever. But I know it's an inconvenience, but security nowadays, and as everything is on the internet and it goes through your router or your router, then basically it's important that you take this time to do it to protect yourself. Okay, so let's just move on. So as I said, so on this particular one, I know all other ASUS routers as well will probably get this update. So this is particularly the GTBE98. If you just do a check, as we'll go through in a minute, to actually go through on the upgrades and everything else and how we do that in our router. Again, I've got previous videos if you want to use the app and things like that. So just do a search for firmware. I've done lots of them. So as we see here, this is going to be quite generic across all of the routers that I've seen that are getting these updates and everything else. That it's fixing a lot of these issues. So I'll quickly go through the security enhancements. As we can see here, we've got a password policy upgrade, a HTTPS, a UPnP, AI cloud authentication, logic, memory safety guard, enhanced IPsec perimeter validation, data exposure mitigation, and a detailed audit trails. I know. And then he's got some 3 system improvements around the connection stability, schedule accuracy, and client list maintenance. So it's a bit of a mouthful of those, and we'll go into in a bit more detail in a sec. But again, as I just want to call out again, important is that after installing this firmware, we strongly recommend you perform a factory reset to activate the new security measures. And as I said, with them actively targeting ASUS routers out there, it is important that you actually do this and take the time to reset it for your own protection and all your devices within your home and everything else, because it's the last thing you want people using your router and everything else for bad things. So as we go through, so in a bit more detail, so the password policy upgrade. So basically, I'm going to put this into more kind of normal terms. So this is stronger passwords. So the router now enforces a minimum of 10 characters with a mix of letters, numbers, and symbols, and it blocks repeated characters. So basically, it's a much harder for attackers to guess or brute force your admin password. So I think that's a good thing for, I know again people like to use very simple passwords. Again, I advise you to use a password manager, or if you need to, perhaps write it down in safely in a book or something offline, you know, kind of thing, somewhere safe that, you know, no one else can actually get into and find out the password. Because sometimes I know we're like, we don't use these passwords to log in very often, but it's a good place to record and everything else and use that stronger kind of thing. Next one we've got here is the HTTPS on 8443. So it doesn't really mean too much. So again, by its secure management by default, so they're defaulting this now. So the web interface, as you'll see in a minute as we normally go through, now uses the same secure HTTPS, so it's encrypted on port 8443. So think of it like putting your settings screen behind an encrypted tunnel, so no one can snoop or can't read your login or configuration information when it's getting transited from both between your network and everything else. So basically it's just encrypting that information, so that's very vital, and perhaps they should have done that a long time ago. Next we move on to UPnP disabled. Again, if you've seen my other videos, I've always suggested that you go in and disable this for safety, because it's been a lot of issues it's caused. Again, universal plug and play is now disabled by default. So UPnP can, what it does, it auto opens ports on your network. So it's convenient but very risky. So basically starting with the disabled or off reduces your exposure, and you can turn it on if you need for any reason. So you can switch it back on and switch it off again if you do need something that uses it, like a printer. Again, I would advise, like, it's off by default now, and I think that should have been a long time ago, but I think they left it on for customer convenience. Next is the AI cloud authentication hardening. So again, around the authentication hardening, is ASUS has tightened how logins are verified and simplified the signing code path. So basically, in plain English, it's fewer ways to bypass the login and fewer moving parts that could break basically behind it. So they've basically just tightened that thing there, so it just makes it better for and more secure as well. So after that, we've got the authentication logic basically. So again, around that is the router records more details around the authentication events, which helps you to support diagnosis of suspicious access attempts. So again, in the next few videos, and perhaps I'll go through, as we said before, you know, using perhaps tools and AI to help us diagnose and download the log, and using AI to interpret these things. Because not everyone wants to go through hundreds or even possibly over 1,000 lines of information, and AI can help us do that. So next videos I'm going to show you how we can do that, and I think that would be quite a good idea on how to use it. Then we move on to the memory safeguard here. So basically this addresses a null point deference class issue. So those are crashes or the odd behavior when the software tries to use something that isn't there. So basically it's fixing those and reduces both crashes and potential security side effects. So basically, again, it's just making things a bit more solid and everything else, and a stronger foundation for in the firmware. So we've got the enhanced IPsec perimeter or IPsec perimeter validation. So as it says there, this basically is the existing input checks are being hardened. So as we said before, they're just trying to get through that and then basically make less moving parts behind it, so less will break and everything else. You've got the data exposure mitigation. Again, this is the CWE200. Basically, it tightens how sensitive information can leak through messages or interfaces. The goal here is to avoid getting attackers helpful clues like error messages that can reveal too much information. So, of course, when they're trying to hack something, if it gives them the information, so like it says, oh, they type in someone's email address and it says, well, no, please use your username. And it might give them a clue of like the username is only 6 characters and it can only be upper letters and things like that. So it's just trying to dumb that down so it gives them less information so they can try and get into and hack these kind of things and find it and expose these kind of loopholes that's in there. Lastly, we've got the detailed audit trails. So basically this is around stronger input checks as well, and then hardening the validation. Again, around the authentication, so it's just basically strengthening everything and closing off any malformed inputs that could cause any kind of misbehavior as well within there. So again, all of these are really important kind of to stop this kind of targeting of the ASUS routers. You might have seen in the news and what posting, as I said in the community post, around they seem to be targeting them around these kind of things where they've managed to access some people's routers and open up the basically a telnet kind of a port on there so they can actually access your router and then install software and things like that. So it exposes everything. Again, it's basically these are very vital kind of things. We have 3 system improvements where connection stability around the core algorithms. So again, it's basically just strengthening that around the stability of your connection to your router. Scheduling accuracy, so again it's around the timed exercises and reliability of the WAN modes that we've got there. So you can see here around the PPoE, PPTP and L2TP WAN modes that we've got there. So again, it's just bringing that down and fixing any bugs they've got there. And lastly, around the client list, basically they resolved an issue that prevented offline devices from being removed from your client list. So you might have seen under the network tab where you had devices there that had been basically offline and you could never get rid of them, or they just stayed there all the time. So they've fixed that finally as well. So that's good to see. So again, number one takeaway is basically install it, and you'll have to factory reset it to get all these kind of things and to flush the memory. That's why they're doing it, just in case you have been hacked or anything like that. This factory default will hopefully erase the memory and everything else from the router if it is in memory, things like that. I know there's occasions where, but there is potential after a factory reset you cannot get rid of it, but hopefully this hardens it all up so to stop all of this being exposed with the security. So next we'll move on to actually the router. So as you can see here, I'm in the web interface, so I've logged in onto the normal 192.168.50.1. I think that's normally the default IP address you type into your Chrome or Safari browser or Firefox or anything like that you use. Once you've logged in with your details, you normally come down to administration and click there, and you go to your firmware upgrade. You can again do a firmware upgrade within your router. Again, as I said, if you are a person that is, doesn't like to, just wants to install the box and let it go and let it do its thing, then you should switch on the auto firmware update and have that on. So it automatically downloads these updates and that is done and dusted. But in this particular case, the issue is that even if you have that switched on, you might not be aware that to actually engage all these security enhancements, you need to do a factory reset on the router. And again, that's not really very good from Asus. Hopefully they'll send out some communications to make it clearer around that. But for my purposes, I've left it off, and that's only because I go into my router probably daily. But also I like to control things a bit more and everything else. But again, if you are not, and you just basically want to install and let it do, always have all of these switched on by default. Leave it, and then it'll let it update by itself, and it'll do that. So as we just come down here to the firmware version, so if I just click on check as usual, this will go out to the ASUS servers. So as we can see here, you can see that it's got firmware upgrade, and it's giving you the latest basically firmware. So if you click on here, if we just scroll up, you'll be able to see here, this is the latest notes that we've just gone through. It does say here to activate it, you do need they recommend a factory default and everything else like it said on their actual web page. Again, if you want to get to the actual Asus web page, it's basically just going to Google or whatever search engine you use and just type in your router's name, and then the firmware upgrade after it, and then just look for the asus.com link, and it will take you to the support page, and then you just look for the BIOS and firmware underneath there, and then go to your latest version, where you can see here this was the 14th of the 8th 2025, and you can see how many megabytes it was, well, and the details as we said. So we can just quickly close this. Now what we'll do is we'll move on to actually updating. So you can see here now I've got a firmware upgrade button. So what it does is once I do click this, this will disconnect your devices, don't forget, so just be wary of this. But in this case we're just going to click this now, and you'll see that where it's going to start actually upgrading. Do give this again around 10 to 15 minutes, because this is quite a big update and everything else what it's going through. Once the update is taken, it will restart and it will come back to your settings. So you can see here it's got a progress. It does say 3 minutes, but I'd say give it 10 minutes and possibly 15 depending on your situation. So don't rush, you don't go and switch it off while it's updating. It's most important. Don't do that, because you'll end up bricking your router. So what we'll do is we'll let that progress, and we'll come back once the update is completed, and then we'll go from the screen there. But again, just to reiterate that this is an important update and you should be upgrading. So now the router has actually restarted with the new firmware, and I just gave it probably just about 10 minutes, and then another few minutes afterwards, just to make sure everything reconnects and everything else. So you can see here we're back to the same screen again, and you'll be able to see that now if you click on your firmware version up here, it will take you straight to the firmware upgrade page, and you can see here that we've got that firmware that we were saying as well, that matches the version that we've got here as well for the 37902 and everything else. As you can see here, it's been updated. Now as important is we'll move on to basically the options that you've got for the firmware reset. So we've got 3 options. So the first method we can do that is when you're in the Asus app or into the web interface, as we are here. If you go down to administration, where we were checking for firmware, and if you scroll up, you'll be able to see there's the restore, save and upload settings. If you just click on this tab here, you'll see here where you've got the factory default. So basically you can reset back to factory settings. You can save your settings or restore them here. So if you do want to save your settings, you can click on here and it will save this file to your desktop or on your tablet or your phone, and you can use this to restore your settings later when you come to set up, as we've done in previous videos. Don't forget, this will go through the whole setup process because you're factory resetting like it's a brand new router. The first one of the options there will be able to upload and restore your settings. Again, as this is around the actual security and everything else, I personally will not use save settings, because potentially if my router has been compromised, or if I do believe it might have been compromised, them settings might have still the compromised settings in them, and you're just restoring them back. So to be on the best side is to actually write down everything that you've customized, like your Wi-Fi names and your SSID for your networks, any other details around the VPN passwords and usernames. I know it's a bit of a rigmarole or time consuming, but again, as I said, you can do this within half an hour. and it is for your best security. But if you do want to do this as quick as possible and get it over and done with, is that you just go into save your settings and then upload them later after you factory reset it. So as you can see here, once you click on the restore, so there is a tick box next to it saying to restore the factory default settings while clearing all content and data logs. You want to make sure that is ticked so it clears everything as well, and all the logs and information. Again, once you've done that, it will wipe everything on your router, so you will have to log in to your router again. So I've got lots of setup videos that you can search for on different routers, but it's generically the same. And again, you can use your app if you want to, but just be wary that you'll have to enter your details again when you're doing this. So the method 2 is, like I've done another video and I'll probably link in the description, is basically the reset button. So it's the hardware reset button on the back of your router. You can basically keep the router powered on and just press and hold the reset button with a pin or a SIM eject tool for 10 to 15 seconds. Basically release it when you see the power or the WAN LED start flashing, or the LED pattern changes within the on your router, and then best wait 3 to 5 minutes for a full reboot. So what that's doing is basically just doing what we're doing here with the click of a button. Instead, you're just using the hardware button on the back of the built into the router, and that will reset it. If you really want to do method 3, if you really want to go full secure and everything else, you can do the basically a hard clean reset. And this is where we've done before, is where you can perform a deeper MVRAM. So this is where sometimes if you really do believe your router's been compromised and you want to clear it completely for the memory and everything else, is that you can use this option. So this method is basically you power off the router, you identify where your WPS button is. So most of the ASUS routers have a WPS button. So basically, while the router is off, while holding down the WPS button, you power on the router, and you keep holding it for 10 to 15 seconds until until you see the power LED start blinking, or it changes its state of current state of the LED. Then release the WPS button, and the router will wipe the NVRAM and reboot as well. And that you'll wait 3 to 5 minutes. And again, if your router doesn't have a physical WPS button, then you can't do this option. But I think most of them will do. Again, that's in extreme circumstances, if you do believe your router's been kind of been compromised or anything else, as some of these things have happened, as we've seen in the news. Again, so the basic ones is the easiest, is just coming here and in the app, and everything else is restoring. Again, the most difficult is just going back and entering all your details again. As I said, is that you could always, even easier, perhaps just open up a notepad quickly, copy and paste the details for like your passwords and your username into that notepad temporarily, reset your router, and then basically once it comes back and it goes through all the screens, you can just copy and paste the same information back in again, like your passwords, your Wi-Fi names and things like that. And just be wary that if you do have any other custom settings around, if you've separated out the Wi-Fi networks, you've got MLO enabled or AiMesh and things like that, just take a record of all that kind, or even a screenshot, something simple that you can refer back to see what was the options you had switched on originally, so you can get back to your original state the quickest as possible. Again, it's going to take a bit of time, as I said, but preparation will save you a amount of time afterwards. It's not ideal that we have to factory reset, but as I said, if we want to keep our routers secure, we must do this. I know it's been a bit of a long video just for a firmware update, but I just wanted to go through in detail for everyone, to understand what the options are and how to do this. So I hope you found, as usual, the video useful. Subscribe and like it if you're enjoying the content I do and everything else. And thanks for watching, and have a great day.